After 3 years of silence, I finally got a letter from my dad, the man who had treated me like nothing and pushed me away. My hands shook. I thought it was finally his apology, but just as I was about to open it, my billionaire grandfather stopped me cold. Don't. Look closer. At first, I didn't see it. Then, the truth hit me. That envelope wasn't hope, it was a trap. Before I tell you everything, drop a comment. If you've ever felt shut out by your own family, I know I'm not alone. Don't forget to hit the like button. I grew up in a house where appearances mattered more than feelings. On the outside, we looked like the perfect family, a father who worked hard, a daughter who excelled at everything, and a legacy built on tradition. But underneath the polished dinners and framed family portraits, there was a quiet war. My father's approval was a currency I could never earn, no matter how hard I tried. I remember the smell of sawdust in our garage, the way he'd shape wood into something useful with his calloused hands. He used to smile at me proud when I balanced on the bike he'd built himself, but that was years before I made the choice he hated, walking away from his path, his business, his version of the future. The day I left, he didn't yell. He didn't cry. He simply went silent. That silence lasted 3 years. 3 years without a single call, a single word. Just a void that followed me into my new life, no matter how many milestones I reached. My apartment in the city was everything he despised, modern, sterile, full of the trophies of my own ambition. The shelves lined with awards, the buzzing phone with deals I closed to the world I'd built without him. People around me congratulated me, admired me. But in the middle of the night, when the city lights blinked through my window, I still ached for something as simple as his voice saying, "I'm proud of you, Arthur." My grandfather was different. He wasn't the warm, soft kind of grandparent most people imagine. He was sharp, commanding, a man who had built an empire with nothing but instinct and discipline. Yet he saw something in me that my father refused to see. When I chose my own path, he backed me. He invested in my dream, mentored me, made me believe that independence wasn't betrayal. Still, even he couldn't fill the space my father left. On quiet Sundays, I'd catch myself dialing my dad's number, my thumb hovering before I set the phone back down. Every holiday felt incomplete, like an empty chair at the table no one wanted to acknowledge. I was surrounded by success, yet lonelier than ever. That's why when the white envelope appeared on my coffee table, my heart almost split in two. The handwriting was familiar, the return address unmistakable. For one fragile moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, the silence was over. Maybe he had realized what the distance had cost us both. I traced the letters of my name, the curve of his D in Dad, and felt years of unsaid apologies pressing against my chest. All I could think was, this is it. This is the moment I've been waiting for. But then, Arthur's shadow fell across the table, and with it came a doubt that would change everything. Arthur's voice was low, steady, the kind of tone he used in boardrooms when he was about to dismantle someone's argument. "Don't open it. Not yet." I froze, fingers still brushing the flap. The air in my apartment shifted from electric hope to something colder. He leaned over, his sharp eyes, scanning the envelope with a precision I'd seen him use when reading contracts. "It looks like him," I whispered, defensive, almost childlike. "The return address. It's his P.O. box. He remembers me." Arthur didn't answer right away. He lifted the envelope closer to the light, turning it over in those long, practiced fingers. "The slant's wrong," he finally said. "Robert's handwriting always tilted right. Remember his wrist broken when he was 12. This," he tapped the letters, "is too perfect. Too even." My heart stuttered. For a moment, I wanted to laugh it off, but the way he said it with absolute certainty hollowed me out. "Grandpa." My voice cracked. "It's been 3 years. If this isn't from him, then who?" He cut me off with that look, the same one that had silenced entire rooms of executives. "We'll find out." I swallowed, hard heat flooding my face. Hope was a dangerous thing. I could feel it turning on me, burning me from the inside. Still, I couldn't help it. "What if you're wrong?" I asked. "What if this is him trying to make it right?" Arthur placed the envelope back on the table like it was evidence in a trial. "Then you'll open it." and you'll finally know. But don't blind yourself with what you want to see. I wanted to argue to cling to the fragile fantasy that my father had finally chosen me over his pride, but deep down, something about the paper itself felt off. It was too crisp, too expensive. My father had always scribbled on worn stationery envelopes bought in bulk from the corner store. This one looked like it came straight out of a boutique catalog. My throat tightened. My hands itched to tear it open and end the torment. But fear held me still. Fear that the truth inside wasn't the truth I had prayed for. "Open it," Arthur said finally, his voice like a gavel. I slipped my finger under the flap, tearing the paper with a sound that felt deafening in the quiet room. Inside was a single sheet. No messy handwriting, no ink blots, just cold typed words. "Dearest Clara," it began. I read aloud, my voice hollow. It spoke of a dire financial situation, of a deadline, of losing everything unless I wired $50,000 immediately. At the bottom, "Your loving father, Robert." My chest caved in. $50,000 my father had never begged. He'd never written letters this sterile, this transactional. And the cruelest part was the sign-off, "Your loving father." 3 years of silence reduced to a cash demand. Arthur didn't need to read it. He'd already seen enough. His jaw tightened, eyes cold with recognition. "It's a scam," he said flatly. "Not from him. Someone knows your story, Clara. They're weaponizing your pain." The words hit harder than the letter itself. Someone out there knew about our silence. Someone had studied us, known exactly where to cut. My hands shook not with hope this time, but with rage. I pressed the letter flat on the table, forcing myself to look at every line. Whoever had written this wasn't a stranger on the internet. This was personal. Too personal. Arthur's gaze burned into me. The question isn't what this is, it's who. And in that moment, the dread in my stomach told me the answer might already be close to home. I couldn't sleep that night. The letter lay on my coffee table, like a loaded gun, silent but deadly. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face, the last time we spoke, hard, distant, his silence cutting deeper than any insult could. For 3 years, I had convinced myself that silence was better than conflict. Now I wondered if my avoidance had made me blind to something far worse. Arthur didn't leave. He sat in the armchair across from me, his phone glowing in the dark, thumbs moving with the speed of a man used to solving problems in real time. Around 2 a.m., he looked up. "I have a private investigator starting a trace on that account number. Whoever sent this didn't cover their tracks as well as they think." I nodded, though my chest still ached with something heavier than logistics. "What if it really is him?" I whispered. "What if Dad's fallen that far?" Arthur's eyes softened for just a second. Then they hardened again, steel behind glass. "If it is him, we'll deal with that truth. But if it's not..." He let the sentence trail off. He didn't need to finish. By morning, I felt hollow. My apartment was littered with half-drunk coffee cups, takeout containers, and the echo of words I'd never said to my father. I picked up the phone more than once, thumb hovering over his number before setting it back down again. If he was behind, this would he even answer? And if he wasn't? What, then? At noon, Arthur's investigator called back. The account was linked to a cryptocurrency wallet routed through multiple servers, but one trace flickered an IP address that matched a residence we both knew too well. Susan, my father's ex-wife. The name landed like a stone in my gut. I remembered her perfume, cloying and expensive, how she used to lean against the kitchen counter with a glass of wine, eyeing me like I was competition instead of family. She had always despised me, always whispered that I was selfish for choosing myself over tradition. Now the puzzle pieces snapped together with a cruelty I couldn't ignore. "She knows," I murmured. "She knows about the silence. She knows he hasn't spoken to me in years. She knew exactly how to make me believe it." Arthur gave a grim nod. "She's bleeding him dry, and now she's coming after you." For the first time in years, I felt something sharper than grief. I felt anger. The kind of anger that clarifies instead of clouds. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a notebook, and began writing. Not a letter, but a plan. I listed what we knew: Susan's gambling debts, the divorce settlement already squandered, the fake letter meant to exploit me. I wrote until the pages blurred. "Clara," Arthur said finally, leaning forward, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. "This isn't just about her stealing money. This is elder financial abuse. What she's doing to your father, it's illegal. And it's cruel." The words settled heavy in the room. Elder abuse. My father wasn't just distant or stubborn, he was vulnerable, and Susan had turned his loneliness into a weapon. I closed my notebook and looked Arthur in the eye. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Then we fight back, not with silence. Not this time." He gave a small, approving smile. "Good, because the day they come back from their trip, we'll be ready." For the first time since that envelope appeared, I felt the balance shift. I wasn't just the daughter waiting for an apology anymore. I was the one setting the trap. The cafe smelled of burnt espresso and old wood polish, the kind of place where secrets could pass unnoticed. I sat at a corner table, my hands wrapped tightly around a lukewarm cup, the burner phone hidden in my purse. Arthur was only a few feet away, disguised in a baseball cap and plain jacket, scanning the room with the precision of a man who had survived countless battles. Only this time, the war was family. At exactly 2 o'clock, Susan walked in. She looked exactly as I remembered: perfect hair designer coat, a handbag that probably cost more than my rent. But her eyes betrayed her. There was a flicker of desperation there, a hunger she tried to hide with her too wide smile. "Clara, darling," she cooed as she slid into the seat across from me. "I'm so glad you reached out. Your father. He's in such a bad way. He didn't want me to tell you, but he's drowning. He needs you." Her voice was syrupy, dripping with fake concern, but every word scraped against me like glass. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. "Cut the act, Susan. I know the letter wasn't from him." For the first time, her smile faltered. Only for a second, but I saw it. A crack in the mask. Then she tilted her head, feigning confusion. "Clara, I don't know what you're talking about." "That letter was forged," I interrupted. "The handwriting analysis, the crypto wallet, the trail of your gambling debts, it all points back to you." Her eyes hardened, the performance slipping. "You think you can prove anything? You're just a spoiled girl looking for attention. Your father leaned on me because you abandoned him." The words stung, but I didn't flinch. "No, you drained him because you saw his loneliness as an opportunity. You stole his money, twisted his pride, and when there was nothing left, you tried to use me. But you underestimated one thing, Susan." "And what's that?" she hissed. "I don't play silent anymore." I stood loud enough that the surrounding tables turned their heads. "Everyone in this room will remember your face today." Panic flared in her eyes as she tried to stand, but before she could move, 2 uniformed officers stepped through the cafe door. They crossed the room in seconds, blocking her path. "Susan Miller," one officer said firmly, "you're under arrest for fraud and financial exploitation." Her composure shattered. She shoved her chair back, nearly toppling it, but there was nowhere to go. The officers cuffed her as the entire cafe fell silent, eyes locked on the spectacle. "You think this will stop me?" She spat at me, her voice sharp with venom. "Your father chose me. He always chose me." I felt Arthur's presence behind me, steady, grounding. I met Susan's glare without blinking. No Susan. He was manipulated, and today that ends. As the officers led her out, her heels scraping against the tiled floor, the room buzzed with whispers. Strangers' eyes followed her, recording the fall of a woman who had built her life on lies. For the first time in years, I felt something close to justice. Not peace, not yet. But the balance had shifted, and I knew the real confrontation was still waiting at my father's front door. By the time Susan was shoved into the back of the patrol car, my adrenaline was gone, replaced by a cold, hollow ache. Arthur and I didn't speak as we left the cafe. There was nothing left to say. We had won the battle, yes. But the war, the silence, the years of absence between me and my father still loomed. That night, I drove to his house. The driveway was the same as I remembered, lined with rose bushes he used to fuss over every Saturday morning. My chest tightened as I walked up the familiar path. It had been 3 years since I'd stood on that porch, 3 years since I'd heard his voice without bitterness in it. My hand hovered over the doorbell, shaking. When the door opened, the man standing there was not the father I remembered. His shoulders were hunched, his face gray eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in weeks. He looked smaller, diminished, somehow like life had been steadily carving away at him. "Clara," he whispered, voice breaking on my name. "What are you doing here?" My throat closed. "We need to talk, Dad." He stiffened. "If this is about money, I don't." I cut him off, my voice sharper than I intended. "It's not about money. Susan's been arrested. She forged that letter. She's been stealing from you." The words seemed to drain the color from his face. He leaned heavily against the doorframe. For a moment, I thought he'd collapse. His lips parted, but no words came out. And then the dam broke. He began to sob, silent, gut-wrenching tears, the kind I had never seen from him, not even when Mom left. She took everything he choked. The house, the savings, the business, all of it. She told me she understood me. She told me you didn't. I stepped forward, instinct taking over, and wrapped my arms around him. For 3 years I had hated him for choosing silence over me, but in that moment, all I saw was a broken man who had been deceived. My tears mixed with his. "I should have been here," I whispered. "I should have tried harder." "No," he rasped, pulling back enough to look at me. His eyes were bloodshot but clearer than I'd seen in years. "I pushed you away. I was so desperate to protect what I thought mattered, tradition legacy, that I almost lost what actually mattered. You." The words hit me harder than any apology could. For years, I had craved his approval, his pride. Now, standing in the wreckage of his mistakes, he finally saw me. Not as a disappointment, not as a betrayal, but as his daughter. We sat in his living room for hours, talking through the silence we had both carried like chains. He told me about Susan, how she'd swept in during his loneliness, how she had filled the void I left with sweet words and manipulation. He admitted he had been too proud, too stubborn to admit he was wrong. And I told him about my life. The business I'd built the nights I lay awake staring at my phone wishing for his call. The anger, the longing, the emptiness. Every word felt like removing a stone from the wall between us. By dawn, the wall was gone. In the weeks that followed, things changed, slowly, painfully, but undeniably. My father began to rebuild not the business, not the old life he had clung to, but himself. With Arthur's help and my own, he started to face the mess Susan left behind. Court cases, financial reconstruction therapy. It wasn't easy, but for the first time, he didn't try to face it alone. One morning, I opened my mailbox and found a leather-bound journal. Inside was a letter written in his real handwriting, imperfect, tilted to the right from that old wrist injury. "My dearest Clara," it began. "I can't undo the silence of the past 3 years, but I can tell you this, I was wrong. You are not my disappointment. You are my legacy. Not the business, not the tradition. You, your strength, your courage, your heart. That is what I am proud of." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. For the first time in years, the silence was gone, not broken by lies, not by scams, but by truth. I closed the journal and pressed it to my chest. The scars of those years would always remain, but they no longer defined me. They no longer defined us. And as my phone buzzed later that evening with a text from him, "Dinner tomorrow. My treat," I realized something. Sometimes it takes betrayal to reveal love. Sometimes it takes a trap to bring the truth into the light. We weren't just father and daughter again. We were survivors, and we had finally found our way back. Looking back now, I realized the letter that nearly shattered me was also the thing that saved us. It forced the silence to break, dragged the truth out into daylight, and made us face what we'd been running from. My father lost his money, his pride, and almost his family. But in losing it all, he finally found the courage to hold on to me. If you've ever felt abandoned, used, or betrayed by the very people meant to protect you, you're not alone. Family doesn't always mean loyalty, but justice, love, and truth will always outlast betrayal. And if this story struck a chord with you, drop a comment, share your own experience, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because sometimes the stories we survive are the ones worth telling.